So, can we just build a Scry deck in Legacy and have it be successful? Let's find out. Hello folks, Phil Gallagher, aka ThrabenU here for another Legacy video. And I'm recording this at the beginning of my brewing process rather than when it's done. Greg has asked me to essentially build a Scry deck. And the build that Greg originally submitted, I think, lacks focus. So, Murktide Regent, and to a lesser extent, Stormwing Entity, are pretty good payoff cards for dumping a bunch of instants and sorceries into the graveyard. And other tempo-oriented creatures like Delver of Secrets can also be paid off on that. But what this deck specifically wants to do is run cantrips that scry rather than the traditional brainstorms and ponders of the format, so that you can gain value from assorted cards that have these triggered abilities that do something when you scry. Of these, the most powerful is certainly Council's Deliberation, which is 2 mana draw card, completely unplayable by Legacy standards. But whenever you scry, as long as you control an island, you can exile this card from your graveyard. If you do, draw a card. So there is the possibility of this being a true 2 mana draw 2. And cards like Expressive Iteration have shown us that anytime we have some sort of effect of that nature, it is worth looking at. But fundamentally, here's kind of my problem. Elven Farsight is a cantrip that doesn't actually draw you a card unless you have a creature card in your top 4 cards. And the deck is currently on 19 creatures, and you can do some math to kind of see how likely that is. You know, it's going to be a cantrip a lot of the time, but not all of the time. This wants you to attack with 1 or more elves so that you get the scry. And when you scry, this thing is going to get bigger, right? Well, as is, the deck doesn't actually have that many elves. And Arbor Elf is not exactly a good magic card. Like, sometimes it does the job that you need done, but you don't tend to play mana dorks in a deck that is going to be a tempo deck list. So kind of what I'm going to have to do is figure out, how do I salvage this? How do I turn this into a playable deck while keeping some of these scry sub-themes around? And I haven't figured that out yet, but with the magic of editing, I'll figure it out instantly. Okay, so I think this is where I have settled on. The toughest thing here is keeping the Scry's matter aspect of this deck. I think Arwen is the most aggressive and competitive of these cards, with the ability to just continue to scale up creatures. It feels to me this is like this is going to be like the like sprite dragon of this deck. Like, this is a 2-drop that is going to increasingly become a problem. It's a little awkward that it's legendary. I think I'm going to max out on 4 of them anyway. And rather than Delver, I'm going to try to make sure that I have enough things that scry in this deck that we actually get some payoff. So when this attacks, I can scry 1, and whenever I scry, I can tap up to X target non-land permanents, where X is the number of cards looked at while scrying this way. So, my opponent has 3 blockers, I preordain and then attack with this, and I say, what blockers? So this is a little janky for sure, and we are going to play some cards that we absolutely should not by Legacy power level standards to kind of stick to this scry sub-theme. One of the problems that I had with the original deck list is that it just did not have any removal of any kind except for the Brazen Borrowers in the sideboard. So I think this is a reasonable way to do this. And the Elvish Mariner is kind of hilarious with Palantir, because that can just scry to every turn, Or actually, I guess the timing of that is pretty awkward, isn't it? Then my opponent will just untap. JK, but Palantir is another, like, Scry Matters thing that can help us fish Council's Deliberation out of the graveyard. And rather than Stormwing Entity, which is Scry-based, I think I just want to go with Hooting Mandrills. One of the biggest reasons for that being that this has Trample, and Trample plus a bunch of +1/+1 counters sounds like a recipe for ending the game. I did shove 4 Ponders into the deck list. The problem with, like, Opt and Preordain and the green cantrip that I immediately cut as soon as I cut the video is that they don't look as many at as many cards as Ponder and Brainstorm do, and I think we need some ability to dig for specific cards. And we'll ultimately see if this ends up being powerful enough. I have kept the general style of the sideboard where we had like 4 counterspells, 4 Brazen Borrowers, like 3 artifact cards, 4 graveyard hate cards, but I have just diversified a little bit so that we have some amount of broader application. So for example, if you just play 3 Null Rods, what happens if there's Urza's Saga tokens already in play, right? So we have a little bit of variety here. And, you know, we'll see if this is strong enough to put some wins on the board. Should you find that you need any cards for your upcoming events, please check out my sponsor, toamagic.com. That's Tales of Adventures. They support awesome content creators like myself, and they have like awesome customer service and free shipping. And if you're tired of getting everything from a whole bunch of different vendors on other sites, just get everything from toamagic.com. Let's battle. All right, we are playing against a Yorion deck of some kind. I have a hand that looks keepable. Opt is an instant. That's something that I can just do at the end of my opponent's turn. Although, I guess this makes me want to save Opt, doesn't it? Okay. Oh, that does not fetch a basic island. Guess we're getting Tropical Island. Put 1 Verdant into the mana base because these cards are fine. Because I specifically wanted to have one more way to get the basic forest that's in the deck list in case that's relevant in some matchups. So I did 1 non-blue fetch land. It immediately comes back to bite me. Not that it needed to come back to bite me because, like, I could have just played the other land. If we get wastelanded on 1. Probably not getting wastelanded after seeing Chromux. A Douthie? A Douthie under there. Sure. 5 toughness. Oh. Cool. I'm not just immediately eating a reanimate spell. That's nice. I have a dismember for that. So this is maybe not the end of the world anyway. The correct line is probably to cantrip multiple times and try to like find a way to stop like grief clearing the way for a reanimate. But that's not what you came here to see now, is it? You want to see the Scry card pop off. The 1 ring. You got it. So this attack step is going to get fogged, but hopefully that doesn't matter too much. So we'll preordain. I feel like I have enough creatures. I'm going to get rid of that. Force of Will is pretty awkward against this. I think I just say no to it. Say no to it? Bottom? Hello? Moto? Okay, new Preordain. Just always yield to that. We're now going to Preordain again, and I would like to find a fetch land specifically. Did not find a fetch land, so I'm just going to hold this back because of the 1 ring protection. And I have a large body in play that's only going to get bigger. I have a way of dealing with the troll. This redundant copy of Arwen is not good. But ideally, I'll just like draw a land to make a giant Murktide Regent. Preordain, put a counter on Murktide Regent, make it bigger. Oh, that's a lot of damage. Karn is resolving. Do I have to worry about something like an ensnaring bridge? Portable hole. Okay, that was not on my bingo card. And boots. Those were on my bingo card. So now, I guess ensnaring bridge, the 1 ring is kind of weird, right? Let's get another one of these going. And I think produce a second body. Although that awkwardly makes Murktide Regent much worse, but this is the one that I can do off of a single mana. 2 Ancient Tombs plus my 2 creatures plus the 1 ring is a lot of damage. Let's see what they've got going on. No imprint. Dark Ritual. You didn't imprint anything with that. Oh, it's Beseech. Sure. With Leyline of the Void. Sure. Now what? Oh, I see. It's just Helm with the extra mana. So that's going to be Helm plus Activate. I am dead to that. I don't have a bounce spell for that. Okay. I am dead. So my opponent was closer to the combo axis than I imagined when I bottomed that initial Force of Will. I thought my opponent was just going to be playing a bunch of like mid-range creatures and Urza Saga based on what I had seen so far in that game. And based on that information, the Force of Will is bad because my opponent is going to draw 2 or 3 cards every turn cycle, and 2-for-1ing myself against that card advantage is bad. But if I am stopping a combo piece, then that matters a lot more. Based on what I have seen, bounce spells are reasonable. Things that interact with artifacts are reasonable, and Force of Negation is reasonable. So I have a lot of things that I can consider. My opponent is on Leyline, making Hooting Mandrills and Murktide Regent significantly worse. Which is bad, because that's kind of the way that I would like to win the game. My opponent also potentially has Bowmasters, which is like a whole nother thing, so we've got some issues. So if I board in 3 Brazen Borrowers, can I win with like Arwen, Mariner, and Borrowers and cut all of these? Probably not. Maybe I need to keep some number of those Murktides in here. I don't know, maybe I can. Maybe I don't Fading Hope, use that to get some of these in. Brazen Borrower can bounce Leylines. I can keep some Murktides, keep one out to some random construct tokens. Question mark, question mark, question mark. This is a little bit too much of the same effect, but this is a Yorion deck on top of that too. I forgot about that. Anyway, this is a little bit too much of the same effect with double Null Rod here, but this helps if, I lose one of them to a Grief or a Thoughtseize. No immediate Leyline, and opponent is on 6. I am just going to throw that into the graveyard. That card is very replaceable. I kept 2 Murktides. That's a card that eats it to Null Rod. Happy to see that. Don't love that. You're a card late. So I think my plan here is just going to be attempt to shut off this artifact mana and hope that my opponent does not have another mana source to activate this immediately. Like, if they do, they do, and I take 5, and then I can start trying to preordain for Dismember for the Kaldra. Seeing Stoneforge now makes me kind of want to have these, but so it goes. I also have Brazen Borrowers as an out to this, which is fine. I don't think I get to take a turn off to play this. I think there is enough danger here from this 5/5. Hey, there we go. I unfortunately only get one of these this turn. So I will just take the land this turn. Put this into play. Drop my creature. And then next turn I can get rid of the Germ token. Fuck! I will counter whatever comes next, assuming that I need to counter it. And I do. Actually, I can just counter the next thing, right? Yeah, countering the next thing should be fine, and I'll just take a good card out of my opponent's deck. Yeah, so I will Force of Will this. I would love to pitch the Arwen that is currently in play, but I don't get to do that this time. Let's keep the Opt that I can play next turn. Yep. Eat 6 damage. I'm at 7. I will go ahead and Opt now. Otawara. No. No. Hey, that's not bad. I'll just Petty Theft this now while my opponent is tapped out and nothing super weird can happen. I am on a 7-turn clock from this Stoneforge Mystic, but fuck. Okay. Upkeep stop. I'll take 1. In Upkeep. Gonna get that out of the way at least for a little while. Another Caracasable Legend is not what I want. Oh, and a Bowmaster's on top. Yeah. That's fine. I think at that point we're just dead. GG. Today's video is sponsored by Moxfield.com, and honestly, they're just the best at what they do. If you need to keep your deck lists online, this is the way to do it. They have all sorts of different viewing options. You can condense that text if you like things to be tight. You can make them visual grids. You can put them in stacks. You've got all sorts of different ways to kind of view and visualize your deck lists. And they also have some really cool functionality, like allowing you to see playtest hands and even fully playtest your decks. So check them out. Okay, I have kind of a medium-looking opening hand here. I think I'm going to just start trying to fill my graveyard with stuff. I really just want cantrips right now before I know what my opponent is playing. I think I'm going to go ahead and just shuffle. I find a Force of Will anyway, which is like quite bad. I only have one blue card to pair with it right now. Seems like opponent's just chilling. Bowmasters is like a card that exists. Yes, I cast this in my opponent's upkeep? I guess this is a fine spot. I'll just draw a card now. I pick up a land. And opponent's just brainstorming. That's fine. This is probably just a mana efficiency play. Shouldn't read too much into it. Land drop from my opponent. And an Up the Beanstalk. I think this is worth Force of Willing. That card is going to generate so much advantage over time if I don't attempt to take it out now. And I am punished for playing my spells around Bowmasters by playing into Daze. So, in good news, I can now draw extra cards with this. So we'll opt. No. Another Hooting Mandrills. I'm going to take the card from this despite the fact that it puts me... Bill, what is it like being a content creator and getting to play video games for a living? Feels an awful lot like drawing 4 fucking Hooting Mandrills, is what it feels like. Oh, and we don't have Brainstorm in this deck. Okay. There's black mana. There goes my Palantir. But you fool, you are only putting more cards in the graveyard for my apes. Yeah, okay. Daze is a thing. I don't care. I think I need to just leave cards in graveyard for the future copies of Hooting Mandrills. So, something that I was going to talk about in the deck tech, but I already broke it up into 2 parts and was talking a lot, is the fact that, like, Up the Beanstalk is such a better payoff card to play around than Arwen? Blue-green 2-drop Scry Lady? I think it's Arwen. Like, these draw cards immediately upon entering play. They are harder to remove. Like, there's a lot of upsides of these. And we are going to keep casting Hooting Mandrills, but drawing 4 of those and then a Murktide Regent is nature's cruelest joke. So, like, the juice is worth the squeeze for Up the Beanstalk, that delicious bean juice. But I'm not necessarily sure that it is worth the squeeze for what we are doing over here. Ah, that's actually pretty interesting. Go, ape, go. 11. Yeah, I'm just going to play another threat here. Alright, it's in play. Leovold is, like, kind of an ideal blocker versus that, though, so we might end up dismembering anyway. Cool, you only make the apes easier to cast. No! Sure, this is fine. Fetch land? Damn it. Okay. Send in for 4. 7. 1, 2, 3, 4. Can't Hooting Mandrills. I can consider dismembering a Leovold. I don't really need to do that yet. Force of Negation, for example, is just still up. I also don't really want to cast a spell if I don't have to. Okay, now I have to. So let's counter that. Yeah, this is why I didn't want to cast spells. This is some shit. I think I dismember now before my opponent gets these extra cards. I just hate it. If my opponent gets one more look at a counterspell here, at least I am playing around days. But then my opponent has a whole bunch of new resources. And, yeah, I don't need to do much more damage. Oh, no, no. This just represents 2 more card draws plus infinity power. Life is cruel. I had a taste of hope there for a moment, and it was dashed away. If I am going to win, it involves attacking. Fuck days. Don't care. Cast monkey. They're getting Force of Will rather than an Edict, so they're just good already. I die so fast. I'm dead now. I die right now. This Murktide Regent grows whenever another instant or sorcery leaves the graveyard. Fatality. Flawless victory. We'll try again. So conceptually, how am I winning? Beating my opponent down. So I would like more threats. I think I give up on Force of Will. I'm just not going to keep up with my opponent if I am 2-for-1ing myself, and I think I'm going to try to become more threat dense. I can board in 3 Brazen Borrowers, and then Fading Hope is kind of awkward. It's a 1-mana way to try to pop a Murktide Regent out of play, which definitely is a thing that matters. It's a 1-mana way to pop a Bowmaster out of play. The issue with both of those is that they accrue value for my opponent. If I am bouncing Bowmaster, then that's a way to take out a Brazen Borrower. If I am bouncing a Murktide Regent, that represents drawing more cards with Up the Beanstalk. I'm not quite sure where I end up being left overall on that. I think I'm going to leave one of these and play a couple of Flusters. Don't have green mana. I have 3 blue mana. I guess if I cantrip my way towards a Murktide Regent, life's okay. I think I opt this turn and ponder next turn. I think that's how I'm going to do this. I am going to just take that because that represents my green mana. Unfortunately, I am playing a deck without Brainstorm, so I just have all these cards forever. An opponent does not shuffle. This is probably a good card in the matchup. Let's ponder. Yeah, just ponder. Fetch, ponder again is fine. Okay. This does open me up to getting this green source wastelanded in a way that's slightly awkward, but gotta keep filling the graveyard. I think no. That is certainly a better card. So the slightly awkward thing here is that my opponent is a Daze deck in addition to everything else. Yeah, sure. Palantir has some issues versus Bowmasters. I'm playing Trop. I think I'm just jamming this card. Okay, cool. So I've got the read that my opponent probably doesn't have counter spells. I can make it so it's pretty hard to mess with me during combat. I can Otawara a Bowmaster out of play if I need to. See what my opponent's got. All right, beans have arrived. This is fine though. I'm just gonna play a Murktide Regent this turn. That's fine. Send it. Scry 1. That's honestly probably fine. I looked at 1 card, so I'll tap 1 thing down. Hit my opponent for some damage, and then we'll Murktide. Bam, bam, bam. I probably play around Days, but take that other card out of the graveyard. Okay, I have a Murktide Regent in play. I can follow up with a Hooting Mandrills next turn. My opponent says they think the Mariner should fly. Well, mare is the Latin word for ocean, and it's on a boat. So I don't know that I agree. But as far as mechanically speaking, yeah, I could totally see that this would be good with flying. Flying does tend to make cards better. All right, so there's Hooting Mandrills. I'll cast that post-combat. Actually, do I want to fetch right now? I guess I want to fetch right now. Slightly weird. Just gotta drop. Since my opponent has Bowmasters in play, I'm just gonna say no to that. We are going to tap down this Orc so that my opponent can't play another Bowmasters and just make this into a 2/2. Yeah. All right, so my opponent does ping this. I can Otawara something out of play. It's just awkward. So I could Otawara this out of play, or I can just deal 6 to my opponent and cast a Hooting Mandrills, which I think is what I'm going to do. Yeah, I think that's just what I'm going to do. I'm a little sad if my creature doesn't resolve, and I will play around Daze, because I want to protect Murktide Regent from Sheoldred's Edict. Because Murktide will just kill in 2 turns. Okay. So my opponent shrinks this, and then they have a 3rd Bowmaster? Or no, it's -3, -1. Oh, I see. They just need to get a Murktide into play. Yeah, funny thing about that. I'm going to Otawara the shit out of that card. So, go home, Murktide Regent. I am crashing in for 10 points of damage here. Oh, fuck yeah, we're getting the Bowmaster out of the way. My creature tramples, so, you know. And now I decide if I opt or preordain. I think I preordain. No to you. How does this read? And Scry 2. I think I just have better cards that I can hit right now. Like, I think this game is very close to over. And I think the extra body, despite like being a lethal attacker, I think the fact that the extra body doesn't ignore this means that this is worse than like trying to find a dismember type card. Okay, we've got a win on the board here. I don't think I am changing anything about sideboarding. Okay, opening hand is kind of whatever. Probably not worth mulliganing, but at the same time is not overly exciting. They like their card. I am probably just going to start the game on a basic and ponder. Arwen is a fine turn 2. Am I okay drawing multiple of these? Yeah, probably. I think I don't want the Hedge Maze. We'll just leave that in the deck for later. Maybe I leave that one on top of Library. I don't really know that I'm protecting this card. Sure. Bowmaster's in play obviously is quite good. I think I'm going to play this game on basic lands. This is Dazable. Opponent does not have a counterspell. I'm going to remove this upkeep stop from my turn. I don't usually play with that stop set. Alright, you got it. It's in play. There is a Thoughtseize. Multiple X1 Brazen Borrowers versus Bowmaster deck is awkward. Mariner plus Arwen, like, is a somewhat real engine. And my opponent takes it. Alright, we've got an opt. I do have the option to just say fuck it and, like, scry and draw a card and just put a counter on this while growing that. And then just Brazen Borrower the token out of play. I think I'm game. I'm having some slight lag issues. I don't want that. But we will make our Arwen bigger. The Council's Deliberation, obviously not really what I am looking for right now. Sure, you can mark some damage on my creature. That's fine. Now I guess I do this. Get my next basic. I'll just petty theft this token out of the way. Crash in for 3 safely. And then I just kind of try to tempo this game out with a pair of 3 power creatures. My opponent floated a black prior to that ponder. I'm just going to assume that that is a lag-related issue. Alright, there's an edict. Seems good. This is a cruel joke. I think I'm just going to draw cards. I think I'm just going to kind of accept that. I think I need more resources to win this game. I'm just going to do that. Play my new creature. Call it a turn. Alright, no attack. But unfortunately, there is another Up the Beanstalk. We're reaching this point of the game where my opponent's card, like, the caliber of card advantage of Up the Beanstalk is so much higher than Council's Deliberation. Like, this draws 1 card immediately, this draws 1 card immediately, and this potentially can draw you, like each one of these can potentially draw you, like, 3 more cards over the course of the game, whereas this always only does 1. I think I am interested in an attack. Okay, it's just a chump for some life. That's perfectly fine. I'll pass the turn. I can do a Brazen Borrower at the end of my opponent's turn and back it up with Flusterstorm. Well, the plan's going to change slightly. Ugh. Land drop afterwards. Opponent has 5 cards. I'm taking that hit. I'm at 13. Oh, and there's more. Now I can't just like do this end of turn and like Brazen Borrower on my own turn. It's now better to bounce this out of the way now so my opponent doesn't draw an extra card. Okay. Like, I'll fluster the Force of Will to resolve my shit, but brings me no joy. Yeah, so my opponent drew 4 cards off up the Beanstalks. Rough. And the Murktide Regent can just be like redeployed next turn. Well, that's, I guess, a start. 1, 2, 3. I guess we'll do that. 4, 5. So I have a 7/7 creature in play. That's a nice start. It does kill my opponent relatively quickly. My Council's Deliberations are quite actively bad with a Leovold and a Bowmasters in play. My Brazen Borrowers probably get walled by an opposing Murktide Regent. We'll see if we can wiggle through. I have Edict Protection. That's nice. What's the other mode on this? Oh, just Drain. Sure. This is already 2-mana Murktide again. Yup. In good news, my Murktide Regent is bigger than their Murktide Regent. In bad news, if I swing out, I might just die. I guess it's nice that my opponent does not have black mana available for a Bowmaster right now. Alright, all these cards, they don't do shit. Is this 6 to scry? Alright, we are not there. Half your life total. Okay. That's real nice. We have these hanging out in exile. I think in response, I cast a Brazen Borrower. I think I do that. That way there's no window where Murktide Regent eats an Edict. If my opponent's got, you know, Bowmaster plus Edict, it's already a problem. Yeah, same sort of thing. What's the other mode? The other mode is Drain. 6/9. I am dead on board. Yep. Okay. GG's. I just saw a tweet that Hades 2 entered early access, and I'm fucking hyped. But for now, Magic the Gathering. Okay. So now I decide how much I care, and this is our first time playing against Chalice decks. I have 14 1-drops in my deck. I think I am just going to end up Force of Willing this, but I can take a couple more game actions before I decide. Hello? Island. I'll go ahead and opt in response. I don't think I want that. Okay, that's perfectly fine. To put more cards in graveyard, let's go ahead and Force of Will. And then I can get basic forest here so that like Blood Moon isn't an issue. I can play Arwen this turn and then start looking at these 2 cards. I don't know, maybe with this many I can just like not, but like the way Arwen is going to scry often involves doing more cantrips, so IDK. It is also possible that I should just play Hooting Mandrills as a 4/4 trampler here. I think I'm just going to drop this creature. Ancient Den. So we are probably playing against a Bomberman deck, would be my guess. That is like Auriok, Salvagers, Lion's Eye Diamond, Infinite Mana combo. That's kind of where it looks like this is going to me. Second Palantir is not awesome. I have a handful of outs to a Cauldra, and my opponent has an Ancient Tomb as a mana source. So, like, sometimes I race this. Let's scry. I do not want additional lands. That can go on bottom. The Mariner can get me through Cauldra, but is maybe not what I'm looking for. I'm just going to go ahead and bottom that. I'll go ahead and get a +1/+1 counter on my Arwen. And my opponent did not let me draw a card, but I had lands on top, so they lucked out. So just a refresher on this card. The opponent may have me draw a card. If they don't, I mill X cards, where X is the number of influence counters on this thing, and then they lose X life, which is the total mana value of those cards. Large Urza Saga tokens are something that I'm not super prepared to deal with right now. I'm hoping that my opponent just puts Cauldra in and attacks me. I think it's easier for me to win the game if they do that than if they hold Kaldra back to Fog for a turn. Another Stoneforge Mystic. Is there a Batterskull too? How bad is this? The hope is that it's just something like Lion's Sash caliber. It is Shadow Spear. Shadow Spear plus Kaldra is a nightmare. I don't think I beat that. This is potentially a mistake from my opponent. They're always taking the Ancient Tomb damage, right? And it only takes 2 of that to Stoneforge Mystic. So if they just do it on their turn, they can also put the Shadow Spear into play. Like, they don't have to attack with the Kaldra if they put it into play. Instant sorcery, extra unused mana, 2 other cards. So this does not get to attack into Kaldra. We're going to use this to stack up more counters on Murktide Regent. So now we start playing the sub-game of, is my opponent going to take the damage or not? I'm not interested in Council's Deliberation ever. If my opponent makes me draw this, this is bad for me. If they take the damage, it's very good for me. I think I have enough expensive cards in my deck that I just bottom this and see what they do here. I mill 2 lands. Life is cruel like that. Not only did I mill 2 lands, but I milled Otawara specifically, which is like my best out for Kaldra plus Shadow Spear. That's definitely frustrating. Oh, there is a Batterskull too. Silly me. Ugh. But like, my opponent could just have Kaldra equipped with Shadow Spear this turn, rather than Batterskull, which can't cleanly attack in, even with Shadow Spear. So, you know, man, if I leave that Hooting Mandrills on top, my opponent has to like attack Batterskull in. Alright, my Murktide gets bounced, nothing matters. I get attacked for 9 damage. Opponent gains 4 life, goes to 14. I think unless my opponent kills themselves with Palantir, I can't win anymore. So this brings Kaldra in. No blocks. Only suffering. That was a very large life swing. Force of Will is late. That now does nothing with the Teferi in play. So, I can cast a Hooting Mandrills. And again, I think unless my opponent kills themselves with this card, this game is over. Bottoming all of that stuff. I'm going to put the counter on Hooting Mandrills so Hooting Mandrills can block Batterskull. And I think my opponent should just let me draw the card here. What just happened? Oh, I see. It just did not make a Moto sound. Okay, so I milled Mariner, Arwen, Trop, and dealt my opponent 5. Yeah, where are my Force of Wills, Murktides, and Hooting Mandrills when I need them? Okay, no creature? Like no Urza Saga token? Not saying that that's a mistake. I don't know what my opponent has. I'm not dead. Right, so Hooting Mandrills goes out of play. I chump block Batterskull. I take 7. My opponent is at 13. I can theoretically kill them with Palantir still. But if, like, Shadow Spear on Kaldra starts happening, then I don't know that I can realistically get through that amount of damage. Alright, I get bounced. So you can just cast Shadow Spear. I literally cannot counter it. Okay, yeah. So this is my opponent at 17 life versus Palantir. So that block is obligatory for me to stay alive. And I need Palantir to solo my opponent. Teferi Plus is for good measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can cast this for 1 mana. Sure. No. I guess I don't have anything to do with the other mana, so we'll just eat this stuff and see if my opponent makes the wrong choice with Palantir while I also get lucky. Bottom both. It is a little funny that I said I did not have anything to do with the 1 mana and then a Fading Hope is on top. I potentially live through the turn. Alright, my opponent draws the card this time. I am deterministically dead. I feel like my opponent made a decent number of non-optimal choices that game, but I just did not have the ability to capitalize on them. So my opponent has Urza Saga Construct tokens, meaning that like the Hurkyl's Recall type cards are pretty reasonable, as are the Brazen Borrower type cards for Germ tokens. That game was so fucking winnable. Scumbag Palantir. So I need to respect Chalice of the Void. This is a 1-mana way to answer a Germ token, and that like definitely matters. But I maybe need to just cut down on the number of 1-drops in my deck and board up other answers to these cards. Council's Deliberation even good? I'm doing such a... Like, it's a 2-mana draw card thing, but like, if my Ops and Preordains get shut off, they're noticeably worse. I think I'm going to play like a Null Rod and not go crazy on it. That has no mana. That has too much mana. I don't realistically think that I can keep this hand without Brainstorm in my deck to fix this. The 5-card hand is perfectly reasonable, and I will be keeping this. So I am always keeping both lands. I am always keeping Palantir and Dismember to have card advantage, potentially, or damage, and a way to answer Stoneforge. And to round things out, I probably just keep a Ponder and get rid of Hurkyl's. I am going to hedge Maze here, rather than just cast my Ponder before a Chalice can happen. So if Chalice happens, I don't want Preordain. And did I say that wrong? If Chalice happens, I don't want Preordain. And if Chalice does not happen, I always want Preordain. So it's a weird spot to be in. I think I'm just going to put it into my graveyard to make my delve creatures better. All right, is it Chalice? It is not Chalice. In which case, I would have quite liked to have the Preordain to cast. I mean, that grows with Palantir. It's slightly awkward this turn specifically. I think I'm just going to take this. I don't know, I could just try to high roll for another cantrip or a delve creature. Since, like, I want to cast Palantir next turn anyway. Okay, yeah, let's shuffle. Brazen Borrower is a much better card. So this leaves Dismember up for a Stoneforge Mystic on my opponent's turn, and if that doesn't happen, I just shove Palantir. Yeah, sure. I'll Dismember that now. I'm going to do it right now in case my opponent like was being cheeky and was trying to pass to the second part of their turn and then cast something, which is something that I sometimes see. Cool. All right, jam Palantir. These are good cards. I think I'm going to bottom the Mariner, top the Hooting Mandrills, and I am okay with either one of these things. Like 6 damage to my opponent's face is great. Drawing this card is great. 6 damage to my opponent's face. Fantastic. Opponent's up to 4 mana. Brazen Borrower plus Palantir is probably a decent clock. 5 mana. Teferi's annoying. Like, that resets my Palantir. And then they draw a card. So now we start getting into this position of, like, do I just play out a Brazen Borrower, or do I jam the Palantir again? I think I am probably just going to play a threat here, as awkward as it is. I can go ahead and Preordain first, though. Like, there are better threats for me to play. I would prefer a giant delve creature this turn, but I kind of need to hit it immediately if I am going to do it, because as soon as I cast, I have paid for this spell. Come on, Magic Online. Anyway, because as soon as I cast a Ponder, I can no longer just hard cast a Brazen Borrower. Teferi pluses. Urza Saga is scary and represents a very real way to bury me in life gain. That's a Thopter Foundry. That one rarely sees legacy play, but that is a way to have 1/1 blockers for this Brazen Borrower. So that's rough. Alright, so there's an artifact land into a blocker. Okay. So I do the whole Palantir thing. This can't attack reasonably anymore. Turn off auto yields. That goes to the bottom. The Hurkyl's Recall can go on top. My opponent has Teferi. I'm still going to take this. Alright, my opponent takes the damage. Unfortunately, the damage doesn't mean a lot when my opponent has, like, Thopter Foundry and, like, Shadowspeared Urza Saga tokens coming. New artifact land. Sure, that's fine. Yeah, I'll take that hit. Sort of frustrating thing here is, like, this still can't really attack. They can just, like, convert a Mox Opal into a Thopter Foundry while still making Urza Saga tokens. That doesn't do anything here. And my opponent's giving me cards with this, presumably. Oh well, let's see if we hit double 6-drop on top of my deck. Yeah, I don't think you tap the Ancient Tomb there. I think I'm just dead before I can cast this Hurkyl's Recall. I'm going to put that on the bottom, put Hooting Mandrills on top, and try to literally spike 2 things that kill my opponent. Alright, my opponent just lets me draw the card, unfortunately. So I'm now dead. So my opponent goes in some... Like, they can just make another Saga token, equip it with Lava Spur Boots, and that's good enough for lethal. This can only block creatures with flying. This game is laggy enough that I am just going to concede and restart Magic Online. Alright, let's do it. We have a land cantrip keep hand. You're getting Chaliced. So given that I need to fill the graveyard for this, I think this is Force of Will pitching Force of Will here, rather than Force of Will pitching Ponder. Oh, fuck me. Okay. That was unexpected. So, life's bad. We are probably playing against something like 8 cast here. And now I have to do something that makes me very sad, and that is cast cantrips into Chalice of the Void to fill my graveyard for Hooting Mandrills. So much for Island Ponder Keep, eh? Okay, so we are playing against the, like, Synthesizer Affinity deck. Also, on the list of things that make me hurt on the inside is Dismembering a Frogmite. It knocks my opponent off of Metalcraft and decreases their artifact count for things like Thought Monitor, so, like, it matters, but it saddens me. Why are we playing that City of Traders? That just seems like a mistake. Like, isn't one of your best top decks right now going to just be, like, Urza Saga or a Seed of the Synod? And so, like, you just end up throwing away City of Traders? Yeah. Sojourner's Companion. Sure. So, I don't have many ways to scry with Arwen right now. So I think I am just playing a Hooting Mandrills this turn and being sad when my next card is Murktide Regent. Metallic Rebuke happens and saddens me greatly. 8-4 in combat here. I'm unsure whether or not I can get to another Hooting Mandrills to block this in time. That helps a bit, though. Basically, whatever it is, it just goes to graveyard. Is it better to Ponder? Ponder in graveyard guarantees 4-4 next turn? Alright. Weird game. I am at 7. It looks like there is now a follow-up play. Chalice on 2. Okay. I mean, it matters. Sure. Nope. So we'll get Hootie. We'll leave the Ponder in the graveyard because it matters for Murktide Regent. Sure. That's annoying. I am at 3. Yeah, I am unfortunately dead to this. We just lost a game in a very embarrassing fashion. Alright. Nullrod, great. Urkel's great. Brazen Borrower's playable versus, like, Urza Saga tokens and Synthesizer tokens and whatnot. I'm essentially just like the beatdown in this matchup. I just want, or maybe tempo is more accurate. I just want to resolve a Murktide Regent and hit my opponent approximately twice with it. Like, that's the plan. I want to go down on some 1-drops so that that whole Chalice thing doesn't happen to me. There's so few ways to scry for this if I get Chaliced, so this probably goes. I want all of these. That means cutting one more card. I will cut, like, a random Ponder. And I think that's good. With Hurkyl's Recall here, I'm just going to assume that this hand is a keep. I think I will just hedge maze on 1, starting to look for a delve creature. Let's say no to that. Okay, that's not a soul land, so that's great for me as a start. This is fine. Cool. So Metallic Rebuke, I guess, could be in my future here. Hey, that's exactly the sort of card that I want. I guess against Metallic Rebuke, playing Ponder and Opt is just better than playing Arwen. Ooh, I want to leave this so that I get rid of the second copy of Murktide Regent. I'll do like bam, 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 no shuffle, do this, pass. Another seat, a chalice on 1. With Hercules right here, I don't think I care. I don't believe that that is my Force of Will target. We'll send a Murktide Regent back into the deck, draw the Tropical Island, let this resolve. And then Arwen probably gets pitched to Force of Will at some point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Murktide. Yeah, it's probably a big enough Murktide where it is just fine to do. Even if I am only taking a couple of instants and sorceries out of graveyard here. Like, it's still just a... Oh, no Metallic Rebuke. Okay. Dismember, then? It is Dismember. Force of Will, pitch Arwen. Okay, I have won the fight over a Murktide Regent. This will potentially race most of the things that my opponent can do, especially considering that, like... fuck. Okay, well, you got the second one. That's fine. So this is not something that is currently killing me. My opponent bottomed both of their cards. I can just Hercules on their turn. Do I play this just as a 3/2 attacker? And then Hercules the following turn? That seems fine. Yeah, that seems fine. Like, my opponent has taken 8 2 Dismembers. And this gets through attackers. Like, this is perfectly fine. Kappa's fine. So, when am I playing Hercules? I think I just play it now. Attack for 3. Just get it all out. Very nice. And then just essentially plan on tempoing my opponent out. Attack for 3, attack for 6, attack for 3 is lethal. Oh, I've also got this Scry. Forgot about that. Another Trop, I guess. No. Unless, yes? So I play end of turn Brazen Borrower. And then I just counter the next thing that the next super relevant thing that my opponent does. They just vomit a bunch of stuff into play this turn, though. I think I'm just going to say no to that. This is an up 2x. I don't need to tap anything then. The other thing is that if things get really weird, I might end up using Petty Theft to bounce something out of play before playing Brazen Borrower. It's my plan to just kill my opponent, but, you know, plans change. You got it. You've got a Chalice. That doesn't impact the board. Also, yes. I imagine about this point is where I see the artifact land hit play. The city goes away. Synthesizer happens. And you know what this card does not do? Block. The floor of this card is a 3 mana Scry 2. And that, like, the floor is what is happening right now when my opponent is just getting attacked for a very large amount of damage. Palantir's great. Send it. Is that good? I think that's good. I'll tap this down, you know, just in case. It is relevant versus not Convoke, improvise counterspells in this deck. So I presume that my opponent cannot risk taking damage, so I imagine that they have me draw the card. The card is Dismember, and then it gets easier for me to force these last couple points of damage through. I don't think I need Arwen. Dismember on top. I draw it. I tap down Chalice. So my opponent needs to remove Brazen Borrower while also generating enough blockers to beat Elvish Mariner and Dismember. You got it. So with this trigger on the stack, I probably Dismember Thought Monitor since that's the blocker for Brazen Borrower before my opponent gets any more cards. That'll put me at 13 to do so. So now my opponent needs to do something like produce another Thought Monitor here beyond this. And they do not. This sort of game is why I'm skeptical that this card will still be seeing play a few months from now. So on the draw, I could play more like Force of Negation type cards to hedge against like Chalice and Synthesizers that come out early. I think I am ultimately okay with that. This is an okay hand. It's not any better than okay. I think I'm going to keep it given how powerful Hercules is. Hercules is fine against that. This is okay. Not getting chaliced immediately either. Fantastic, and I've got more land. So I'm going to ponder Palantir plus Arwen? I don't think I want two of these cards. Let's just shuffle. It's better to just find something like a Delve threat for a little bit later on in the game. So I would vastly prefer not to use my Force of Will. I would like to use Force of Will or Force of Negation to back up a Hercules recall. So now the next question is like, when do I want to Hercules? I think I have to respect Lava Spur Boots and hold up Hercules immediately. So this is 1/1 creature. I'm just going to fetch now. I'll just get a drop. The reason that you have to fetch before Urza Saga ticking down is you don't want to get got by Pithing Needle. Like getting your Pithing Needle, or getting your fetch land Pithing Needled and losing a game that otherwise would be very difficult to lose is quite disappointing. All right, so they are 2/2s. It is just a Mox Opal. That's a nuisance. All right. Sure. I think this unfortunately does have to be this card here. This removes a lot of power. A Force of Will pitching a Kappa Cannoneer. We're going to say no here, and we are going to Force of Negation, probably pitching Mariner. That takes this stuff out of play. My opponent can replay the Mox Opal if they want, but they can't replay the Frogmite based on their artifact count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can play Hooting Mandrills. I think I'm going to try to high roll with Opt, though. Fetch land will do. Put that on top. Yeah. Fetch. Now this lets me put a much stronger threat than Hooting Mandrills into play. We get Opt, Hercules, Force of Negation, and Ponder out of there. So this is a 7/7 Murktide Regent backed by Force of Will. Considering that my opponent has Ancient Tomb, that is quite good. Shadow Spear could be a little rough. Another Murktide is not what I am looking for. So I'll do this. My opponent is at 8. I don't think I can realistically cast this one easily, so I think it becomes my Force of Will pitch. And I just play this as a 2-power creature that maybe gets bigger. Alright, opponent's at 6. And we'll see how they play this. It is floating mana or Shadow Spear. Ooh, Ancient Tomb is being tapped. I can't counter that. That's frustrating. Yep. So hopefully I can just get this construct token out of the way. I have to pass the turn here. This is what it's like to not have Brainstorm in your blue deck. Just this right here. Yep. Alright, I take that hit. My opponent unfortunately goes back up to 8, which turns Ancient Tomb back on realistically. Alright. Let's try to do something disgusting. No. Absolutely not. Counter here. I am drawing all the wrong sorts of cards. I attack for 3 of this back, but my opponent is gaining ground on me. Alright. We'll see if my opponent is going to make that other token immediately. They do not. They are just chilling. My counter spells do nothing if they don't cast spells. Okay. Drop. 4, 5, 6, 7. I can Murktide, I guess. It doesn't really matter, though. Sure, so like I can Force of Will back, go to 8, have a Murktide. My opponent has 2 very large creatures, can attack with multiple of them. I think at this point, the game is over, and I'm just going to concede and drop this league. Okay, so what did we learn today? I think the biggest thing we learned is that there's just not enough Scry payoff to make building a Scry deck worth it in Legacy. And I think specifically by that, I mean at the speed that is appropriate for Legacy gameplay. Like, there are other Scry cards that are reasonable, but a lot of them cost 4 or more mana or are otherwise slow. And I think it is probably easier to build a Scry Matters Commander deck than it is a Scry Matters Legacy deck. Council's Deliberation was not the draw 2 that we would have hoped for. We have so many cantrips that we are kind of bad against Bowmasters, even though we don't have X1 creatures. Palantir is a scumbag, and I'm never playing that card again. I think we legitimately got a little unlucky with some of those Palantir triggers and orders of cards that were on top of library. But, like, not even just Murktide Regent attack in with a large creature saved this deck. I probably improved it from the original version. I think we would have been a very awkward tempo deck with not enough payoff, and like the initial elves would have been quite bad. So I think we improved the deck, but I still think it's not there. Like, I used some words that we used on the podcast recently. That is the Eternal Glory podcast that I am a member of. The opportunity cost of playing cards like Opt and Preordain over cards like Brainstorm and Ponder is incredibly high. And I even kind of hit a middle ground and put one of the two into the deck so that I could dig for specific cards. But just like the feeling of having literally 4 Hooting Mandrills in hand, or like 2 Murktide Regents and 2 Hooting Mandrills just like at multiple times throughout this league, was just absolutely awful. And another thing is that like Council's Deliberation wants to stay in graveyard, whereas these cards want you to remove things from graveyard. So there is tension in that regard there. Also, like, Scry is much worse than Surveil. The Surveil putting things into the graveyard so that you, like, your Murktide Regents and stuff gets bigger, like, very, very much matters. So ultimately, I don't think you can build a good Scry deck in Legacy. There's one other way that I thought about building this deck that I thought would just be too janky to work. And that card is Kinesos, Priest of Thassa, which lets you increase the number of cards you scry and has an activated ability that lets you potentially put a Kraken, Leviathan, Octopus, or Serpent creature card directly into play. And then I realized that this is a card from Jumpstart, and it is not actually on Magic Online, so I couldn't brew with it, even if I wanted to. So Greg, I don't think we built a successful Scry deck. We gave it the old college try, the Thraben University try, but it wasn't good enough today. Folks, if you have thoughts for Greg down in the comments below, I'm sure that they would love to read them, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day. Should you need magic cards, toamagic.com. Promo code ThrabenU will save you a bit on your order. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go download Hades 2. See ya!